Part 14. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 132. The servant who came to deliver tea couldn't help but feel a little more sympathetic when he saw her like this. They may not be unable to understand this young lady's sometimes bad temper. Certain partialities in this family are rooted in their bones. For example, the family relationship cultivated for a long time is destined to prevent Mr. Lizzie from treating Sira equally. Luxid looked at Sira, who was hanging her head. After 2 seconds of silence, she turned to Anaxi, who was sitting there, and ordered coldly, "Get out of the way." "Ah!" Anaxi was stunned. "What did you say?" Roxid's charm skills were completely ineffective on her. Realizing this, he restrained his attitude for some unknown reason and said, "Get out of the way and let Sira come over and sit down together." "Oh, if you didn't tell me, I would have called her." Anna 11 smiled awkwardly, and shouted to Sira, who was obviously pretending behind her, "Come on, Sira, didn't we play the piano together before? What's wrong with you?" Sira dared to confront her, but she also turned around and dug a hole for her. Sarah walked over and sat down. The two beautiful little faces with their own styles looked at Roxid, quietly waiting for his teaching. "Play a piece together for me. I want to evaluate your respective levels." He took on the posture of a professional teacher. Sierra raised her eyebrows and glanced at Anaxi, who was in high spirits next to her. Now she felt more and more that if the supporting characters and the protagonists of this game and this otome novel had not improved their intelligence, no one would be able to fall in love with this idiot Anashi. Did she forget what she just said about how they often played together? When had she played together with her? Moreover, the chosen music score was March of the Wanderers, which she had heard but couldn't play at all. Wouldn't this reveal the secret in one flick? The state of the two colliding together is like you using a saw to pull your wood. I glanced back and forth on the music score and my fingers with my eyes, popping out one broken note after another. Not only Luosied frowned, but also the servant passing by shook his head. "Okay, Sira, stand up." She followed Luosied's instructions and stood next to the piano. Then she saw him walking over and scolded the girl on the seat with an unhappy face. "Is this your ensemble? How many ensembles is it for? You let her touch it, pass the piano? Not a single beat is on point." Anaxi closed her lips and said nothing, secretly glancing at Sira with an innocent face, thinking only that it was she who was dragging down her performance. "It wasn't like this in the past, Mr. Lucid. I can actually play pretty well on my own." The way she called her teacher was a little awkward and shy. She probably hadn't fully adapted to the fact that the mermaid was supposed to be in the water tank, so how could she suddenly become a great and intelligent musician? Luosied didn't care about her deliberately soft voice to please her, and let her play it again alone. But this time, before he even turned over the music score, he pressed one hand on the keys to make a harsh noise, which forced Anaxi to stop while she was still intoxicated with herself, and at the same time scared Sira, who was standing next to her. She took a step back and looked at Roxed with her frightened milk-brown eyes, and immediately received an apologetic look from him. Sira shook her head slightly at him, and then she listened to Roxed scolding Anaxi for 2 or 3 minutes in fluent English, even with a bit of a capital accent, correcting her mistakes from the first page of the score to the last note where she was forced to stop. Anaxi, who was so demoted that she couldn't hold her head up, was about to cry. Her red eyes imitated what Sira would do, staring straight at Roxid, without even saying a word of comfort in return. As a result, a prompt appeared again on the system interface. The mermaid's friendliness score is -5, and she already has a negative score of 10 points. Just because she didn't play the music well and was deducted a lot of points, Anna 11 could no longer smile. She couldn't figure out why the conditions for losing points were becoming more and more relaxed. In fact, in Sira's opinion, Anaxi's skills were enough to play some ladylike ditties, but she chose this devilish piece that even the master couldn't easily play well. The mermaid who sings and eats people is naturally sensitive to musical notes. Isn't this just a scolding? Sela, it's your turn now. Anna 11 immediately stood up to make way for her. When he glanced at her from the corner of his eye, he finally felt more like he was about to watch a good show. In order to avoid making the same mistake again, Sira bit her red lips, and pursed her moist lips worriedly. I've actually never played this before, can I change it to a song that I know how to play? The way she spoke was similar to Anna 11's, but to Luxide's ears, the sweet voice that spoke to him could instantly tickle his heart. He changed his attitude of standing and scolding people, sat down next to Sira, and his voice became gentle and careful unconsciously. What do you want to play? Anaxi, who was still standing waiting for Sira to be scolded, grabbed the side panel of the piano case, and her fingernails turned white with such force. You can also change the song. In the memory of Canon Fodder Sela, she has always been a player who was not interested in piano, and her playing was just average. Moonlight Water. The tempo is slow and requires excellent wrist balance and control. It is not difficult, but it does require practice. One song, Sarah, was played very reluctantly, but Loosied suddenly joined the ensemble and raised the whole tune to a new level. Sierra felt that he was leading her. He is truly a talented mermaid with musical talent. Anaxi next to her was a little dizzy watching the interaction between the two, and her excessive anger made her have difficulty breathing. Why does this mermaid have two faces? It's so abominable. I'm sorry, Mr. Roxt. After the song was over, Sierra took the lead and touched her right wrist, which had had the medical splint removed, and said sheepishly, my wrist still hurts a little, and it's not stable. In fact, she had already recovered because of his saliva, but that didn't stop her from using this excuse to cover up the fact that she wasn't playing well. Apart from the words it hurts a little bit, Loosied didn't hear anything else. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't hypnotize Anna 11, he would definitely help her again. You did a good job. He took her hand, tried a few notes on the keys, and told her in a warm voice what she had just played wrong, without any temper at all. Faced with such a double-standard teacher, Anaxi turned pale and said, let's take a break. She wanted to rush out for some air, but she didn't want to let Sierra give her a chance to be alone, so she just stood there stiffly. Sierra didn't like the atmosphere between the three of them either, and Anaxi's gaze almost poked a hole in her body. She stood up and said, I'm going to get some air. Take me around your manor. Loosied stood up naturally. Good. Being left alone in the piano room, Anai sadly found that her presence or absence had no impact at all on their conjoined intimacy. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 133. For the first time, she felt that even if the system gave her so many abilities, it was still useless and had no effect on her future path to her ambitions. This is the rec room. Sierra pointed to the bright hall, where servants were cleaning, and various billiards and poker tables were placed inside. Loosied followed her, looking thoughtfully at the half-visible oak forest outside the window. At this time, the girl did not realize that the fatal danger of falling off the horse was approaching. She took Luxid to visit some of the places to visit, but when passing by the library, she didn't know what attracted him, so she turned and walked towards the huge glass window in the library. From this perspective, you can clearly see beyond the oak forest and on the main road. We have to go back to class. As soon as Sierra walked up to him, her shoulders were pinched by Loosied, and she was easily pushed to the bookshelf nearby. She didn't see a black horse carrying a young man galloping towards him, so she asked Lucid without knowing why, what's wrong? He held the slender right wrist, fixed his gaze on her soft lips, and said softly, your hand was not completely cured yesterday, why are you telling me now? It's almost done, It just hurts a little bit. Sierra glanced at the open door of the library, feeling that the position between the two of them was very bad. If a servant came over, it would be over. She looked at Luosied's eyes completely fixed on her mouth, and tried to change the subject. You met Dad with the same face as when you were a mermaid. Didn't he feel something was wrong? No one will find out except your sister. She is very strange. Maybe she knows something. Luosied squeezed her wrist and did not dare to exert force, and then touched her lips. The way she bit her lips wet just now still stayed in his memory. What do you mean? Sierra said vaguely, not daring to open her mouth too wide for fear that he would poke his finger into her mouth like she did before. I can't change her image of me. She recognized me as the mermaid in the tank from the first moment she saw me. My ability is immune to her. Luosied lowered his head, but it doesn't matter. I will kill her the day she reveals her secret, and she will always bully you anyway. You've been back to the island, and your words are getting weirder and weirder. Sierra pressed against his chest to prevent him from getting closer. At that time, I just didn't learn how to speak and the rules of survival on land. Luosied chuckled. I will never hurt your Sierra, don't be afraid of me. At the same time, Eric had already entered the manor under the guidance of the servants. Today he came in through the gate as a guest visiting Sierra. The servants here were all his old acquaintances, and there was no need to guide him. They just told him that Sierra had asked him to go there by himself in the piano room, and then they went about their business. Eric held the money bag and sniffed the house. When he smelled the two entangled smells, he immediately lowered his face and walked straight towards the library. At this time, Sierra was pressed against the bookshelf, listening to Rox's gentle coaxing, open your mouth, Sierra. You know that sometimes internal use is better than external use. It's better not to use it. Sella felt her legs weak when she saw the angry look on his face. But as if he had planned it, the moment Eric reached the door, he held her chin, opened her mouth, leaned over and kissed her. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Shire. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 134. Sierra was trapped between his arms. She was very worried that someone would come at this time, and her sight was blocked by the tall Roxid, making her whole body feel weak. Eric stood expressionless at the door of the library. The smile on his resolute face was gone. Fire spread in his brown eyes. The scene of the two hugging and kissing in front of the bookshelf was like a sharp butcher's knife. It pierced into his heart and dug a big hole in his heart. The pain of betrayal made him gasp heavily. The blood flowing in his veins was stimulated and rushed through his body. Unable to suppress his anger, Eric took a step back. His breathing became heavier and heavier. The corners of his lips were pulled apart, and his teeth were bared, showing a fierce expression. The wolf's genes began to interfere. He had warned Sierra countless times to stay away from the deep-sea shark, but they were still together, kissing passionately in front of his eyes. I really wanted to rush in, kill him, and snatch him back. She should be the girl he kissed first. As soon as this thought occurred, Eli clenched his fists, and the veins in the muscles of his arms popped out, squeezing the blood vessels and bursting. He took another step forward. Lucid, who felt the strong threat, not only did not stop the kiss, but also deepened the movement. The entangled Sierra couldn't help but let out a low moan, and she softened. Eric? What are you doing standing at the door of the library? Haven't you found Miss Sarah yet? The servant's strange voice sounded in the corridor. Sierra, who was about to be dragged into the abyss by Lucid, suddenly woke up when she heard the word Eric. A chill ran down her spine and her hair almost stood up. Eric. When did he come? The hand she placed on Loxida's chest began to exert force, and she kept pushing him away. It's okay, Luosied. My friend is here. Let go. She was so anxious that she wanted to step on him with her foot. She looked like she was about to get angry and bite someone. Finally, Logozide relaxed. He turned back with an innocent look on his face. Is anyone here? Sira tilted her head hurriedly, looking around his shoulder towards the door. There was nothing outside the wide-open library door. She slipped through Roide's hands and walked quickly to the door. Only a dark money bag was left on the ground in the corridor by the door. Sierra picked it up and immediately recognized this handmade wallet made of cowhide, which was left by Eric. How long had he been looking here? When did it start? She couldn't help but feel cold in her heart. The friend who rescued you by the water, Logosied walked to her side. Sierra raised her head and said angrily, did you know he was coming early in the morning? I have no idea. Just listen to his quibbles. Sierra took a deep breath and exhaled it, pinched his waist hard. Don't do this in front of your friends again. Why? Logosied touched her face, and her calling Eric a friend made him very comfortable. I don't want to hurt him, Sarah said fiercely. You can't kiss me in the open door again, and I will ignore you next time. The consequences of ignoring your words will be very serious. Logozide immediately darkened his face, grabbed her hand and pulled her back to the library, and the door was slammed shut. The servant who had just arrived at the door and planned to inquire about the situation was frustrated and had no choice but to say outside, Miss Sarah, what did Mr. Eric say? He just rode away angrily. Are you okay? You don't want to pay attention to me anymore. Logosied pressed Sarah against the door, his aggrieved voice mixed with some cruelty and jealousy. I came here for you. Do you not want to pay attention to me because of this matter? At this time, he was like a mobile cage, and Sarah could hardly breathe due to the confinement. She has very clearly realized that a mermaid with open intelligence can calculate people as well as anyone. He may seem innocent and smart, but at his core he is also a very sinister person. She first said to the servant behind the door, I'm fine. Then he sighed softly, took the initiative to put his hands around his waist, and hugged him tightly. I just want to tell you that I don't like kissing in front of outsiders. Isn't this kind of thing something that can only be done between two people? Just because you don't like it, Logosied clasped the back of her head, breathing heavily and pressing his lips and tongue unwillingly on her neck. Sierra's top today was a white lace turtleneck fake two-piece. The layer of white lace that was close to the skin was connected by 3 mini buttons, which were easily opened by his teeth. There are still traces of last night's bite on the neck, only a little mark left, which will disappear soon. Staring at those light kiss marks, Logoside's jealous state of mind improved a little. Sierra touched his waist, letting the mercury-like long hair rub against his chin, and said soothingly, private matters belong to two people, I've always told you so. The mating of mermaids is public. Logosied was dissatisfied and didn't think there was anything wrong with what he did today. He said confidently, in order to declare our sovereignty, we will have sex in public in the sea. It is normal to see each other's spouses. If necessary, we will compare ourselves. Sierra, what are you comparing to? She couldn't even imagine that the scene was comparable to a certain V-movie. Sierra also understood what Roxid meant today. He wanted to declare his sovereignty over her to Eric. But at this time, Eric felt that he had been betrayed and broke up with her. In addition to feeling guilty, she was more worried about whether he would get revenge from him. The characters hidden in the bones of these male protagonists are more ruthless than the others, otherwise there would not be so many death endings about her. She gave Eric many hints in the name of love. From the beginning, she planned to seduce him. At that time, she only planned to hang him to protect herself. But something went wrong while getting along with Rose Hill, and the same was true for Roxide. She let him go back to the sea to let him be free, and she was also left alone. Sierra gets a headache just thinking about this yarnball-like relationship. Wolves move in groups and they help each other. If they cooperate to kill Lucid, What will happen to him, a fish on land? Can resist it? But you are in my world, Logosied. Except for prostitutes, no one among us will kiss passionately in public and do it with heaven and earth as their bed. Sierra suppressed her tears and tried to say calmly, anyway, I would never let others watch such a thing casually. Sierra Logosied raised his face. Her neck was already red from his bites. Seeing that her eyes were moist and blurry and about to cry, she immediately panicked. Sorry. He pulled her away from the door, held her little hand, lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Except for ignoring me, I agree with everything you say. Don't cry. Logosied caught her tears with his lips. His gentle attitude was like treating a fragile item. Sierra bit her lip and shook her shoulders slightly. Don't do this again. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 135. Logosied also felt a little more regretful. If he had known that she only cared about other people's opinions, he would never have done this. No more. His voice was low and a little coaxing and cautious. Anna 11 waited and waited upstairs but no one came. When she went downstairs to look for her, she happened to meet Sierra with red eyes walking out of the library. A small button on her neck was buttoned in the wrong position, and she looked like she had been severely bullied. What did you do inside? Anaxi stepped forward, pretending to be kind, and unbuttoned her buttons to rebutton them. After seeing the clear and dense hickeys underneath, her nails reflexively clenched the buttons, and the fragile buttons that were already attached to the lace immediately it fell and rolled around on the floor. Unable to hold back her anger for a moment, she took off the button. Sierra covered her neck and took a step back. What are you doing? Logosied held her lower back with one hand, and then he said with a dissatisfied look, go back to class. Anna 11 felt uncomfortable because of the undisguised disgust in his eyes. I just wanted to help. She looked like she had been kissed a lot on it. When the servant heard her words, her neck became a focus of attention. Sierra counterattacked directly, how many people's kiss marks have you seen before you can accurately identify that the marks on my body were kissed with the mouth? How many times do you have to pour slanderous water on me? Anaxi bit her lower lip, it's not me. You don't know how poisonous the bugs are in early spring, do you? Sierra smiled sarcastically, no one in my bedroom is trying their best to catch mosquitoes and spread insect repellent every day. Sella, the servant's cleaning is the same. Anna 11 just wanted to shut her mouth at this moment. She snorted heavily, covered her neck and said coldly, that's right. Anyway, I have no say in this family. I'm going to change clothes. Luxid, who was left alone, watched Sierra disappear around the corner. He turned away and looked at the girl he hated. That's it for today's class. Miss Anai, I hope you'd better reflect on it. Reflecting on what? Anna 11's heart skipped a beat and she subconsciously glanced at the servant who was still beside her. The daughter of a mistress should behave with her tail between her legs. Logosied went to the piano room to get his briefcase, ignored Anna 11's face that was about to cry, and walked out of the door ruthlessly. Anaxi, who had countless knives in her heart, didn't even eat that night and cried in the room all night. Upon learning that Lizzie was uncharacteristically unwilling to fire the talented musician no matter what, the servants felt very sad when they discussed this matter. They can no longer understand whether it is Sierra or Anasai who is being bullied at home. Sierra's bad reputation in the town continues to spread under Josie's influence. There were rumors everywhere in the bar that she was a jealous young lady. Not only did she kill her sister Anaxi's pet rabbit, but she also deliberately kicked her sister in the stomach while she was sleeping. She even skipped classes to go out to play when she first arrived at the etiquette school. The next day, she killed a teacher. Such outrageous rumors reached the ears of Carol at the tailor shop. She chuckled and said to the customer taking measurements, Sella killed the rabbit, kicked Anashi, and beat the teacher. Tisk, I don't know what happened to Mrs. Josie. Who would believe those who dare to let these rumors spread? Who wouldn't believe it? The story is very true, don't you believe it? The guest looked at her curiously, as if she knew the inside story. Do you know the lowly black slaves brought by Saint Laurent? In order to save them, Syrah borrowed a large sum of money from the Duke of Rosehill, and she even hid the debt from her family. What else? Saving the slave? She got kicked in the head by a donkey. Of course, I made the clothes for those black slaves with my own hands. Sierra also bought beds and furniture for those people. She bullies people just because of her ignorant and kind character? Is this possible? Carol, who was straightforward, directly cast the suspicion on Mrs. Josie. I heard that Josie is getting married to Lizzie next month, and preparations for the wedding have begun. Please tell me if there is anything wrong with this. I still don't quite believe it. Why would a noble treat such a slave like a beast? Oh, I still have her purchase record and signature here, let me show it to you. Carol was tired of others always questioning her, so she threw out the account book. A few wealthy young people shopping saw the records above. They were all wearing custom-made work clothes made of relatively good materials. Everyone showed surprised expressions. After hearing the increasingly fierce rumors, Sierra still maintained a calm mind. Because of the suicide of teacher Bernice, she took a week off and rested at home for 2 days. She made an appointment with Khalida early this morning to do charity. First, he delivered bread to homeless people on the street, and then he went to a welfare home to deliver some children's clothing and picture albums. You actually used all the first money you earned from the laundry factory for charity. I don't even know what to say about you. Khalida hooked her shoulders, her face full of anger. Listen to those rumors outside. What did he say about you, describe you in such a bad way? I guess no one would want to play with you except those who know the truth. Syrah didn't care much, she just wanted to make it known to everyone so that she could use her tricks more easily. Thank you for accompanying me. In exchange, how about playing cards with you this afternoon? I happen to have an appointment with Mrs. Giganti and the others. Today is the day for us to play cards together. Let's go together, Khalida said with a smile. They will definitely not hate you. Syrah nodded. I still have some money left, so let's give it to the old people living alone first. You really are, Khalida sighed. Okay, then donate my share of the money, it's not much anyway. I can't wait too long to play cards. At most 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I have to go to the Black Forest. Black Forest, Khalida became interested. What? Are you going to see Eric? That bodybuilding hunter? Sierra nodded. She had just passed by the butcher shop on Hawk Street. The door was closed today and no one was doing business. The shops next to it also said that they had not been open for 2 days. Her intuition told her that it was because something happened to Eric, otherwise Gail would never give up every day's opportunity to make money. She has been delayed and hesitated at home for a long time. She must go and take a look today. Then again, was the money that Duke Rosehill received from his investment sent to his home by the factory manager, or did you go there yourself? Sierra thought for a while. I will send it to him myself tomorrow. Mrs. Giganti and her friends were particularly enthusiastic about Syrah. When she refused to take photos in the factory or be on the news, and just wanted to keep a low profile and do good deeds, Khalida, who couldn't hold back her words, was playing cards and chatting. I complained to a bunch of rich sisters. Everyone now thinks that Syrah is a poor and kind-hearted poor nobleman. At home, his father does not care for him and he is bullied by his mistress. When he makes money outside, he still spends most of it for charity. He is simply a selfless little angel. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 136. Mrs. Giganti, who often does charity work, looks like she has a daughter filter when looking at her as she gets older, making her feel distressed everywhere. Their friendly attitude is also the result that Sierra wants to see. After all, from the beginning when she agreed to join Khalida in the Alliance factory to now, everything that happened in every step was within her control. In this day and age, Josie's attempt to ruin a girl's reputation was extremely vicious. Anashi's previous golf incident was finally suppressed by Lizzie. This time, Sierra will never let him have this chance. She curled her lips and played the last card, pinched the macaron on the dessert plate and took a small bite. The sweet taste was blended with the coffee, and the feedback from her taste buds was very satisfying. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Sierra came out of the small garden of Khalida's house on time, called a car and went straight to the Black Forest. Summer is about to begin, and the weather is getting hot very quickly, and the afternoon sun is making me feel hot all over my body. Sierra touched her smooth neck. Yesterday, when Luoxiet finally pressed her against the door and kissed her, there was a lot of saliva on it. By the time she went to the room and took a shower, all the traces were gone. Otherwise, she would really not dare to go see Eric with her neck exposed today. The mountain roads are so rugged that it is impossible to reach the top by car, and some trails can only be reached by horseback. Sarah got off the bus halfway, paid the money and told the driver repeatedly that there was no need to wait, and climbed up alone. The werewolf with a keen sense of smell immediately discovered a human intruding into the territory, and the smell on her body was also very easy to identify. Sarah hadn't even walked out for a few minutes when, in the green forest that cut the light, Gale and Jem, who were both strong and graceful, ran towards them. They were here to stop her. "What are you doing here alone, Sierra?" Gale's strong body pressed directly in front of her like a hill. Sierra squeezed the hem of her skirt, her throat a little dry. "I went out to do charity today and found that your butcher shop was not open, and Eric and I caused some misunderstandings yesterday. So Are you here to apologize to Eric?" Gale interrupted her, not in a good mood, with two thick and black eyebrows wrinkled. Jem, who was beside him, also condemned, "Eric was hurt a lot by you." Sierra bit her lip and turned pale. "Did he hurt himself?" "Hurt? In a sense, it's almost hurt, but it's not hurting yourself. Stay away from him and don't see him in the past few days," Jem said with a forced smile. The worry in his eyes could not fool Sierra's eyes. "So, something did happen to Eric now?" Sierra said guiltily, "Is there nothing I can compensate for? I really didn't mean to hurt him." She really didn't want to make enemies with these werewolves. "There's nothing you need to compensate for," Jem shook his head, "just stay away from us and Eric from now on. We will still send you money regularly from the butcher shop in town." Sierra bit her lip again and again, and after teeth marks appeared on her lower lip, she heard her disappointed and hesitant response, "I know, I'm really sorry, friends, I won't bother you anymore. Tell Eli I won't see him anymore, I'm really sorry." They were not going to pursue the harm she had done to Eric. It would be best that way. It would be okay if they could disappoint him and stay away from her this time. From the beginning to the end, her purpose was just to avoid death. As long as the werewolves were not interested in her life, she didn't mind not interfering with them, including Eric. Her love was spread to several people. Facing the innocent werewolf boy, she was indeed wrong and felt guilty. Separation is best. Sierra smiled at them, turned around and left, her back looking so lonely. Jem couldn't help but whispered next to Gale, "Is this really good? Eric wants to see her, right? Isn't it too cruel to drive someone away like this and make her not be friends with us? It will take her a day to hike down the mountain from here." Gale pursed her lips tightly. "Eric's early transformation doesn't have much sense at all. If he sends Sierra in, he will kill her. He should have killed her." Jem, who was still feeling sorry for Sierra a second ago, said, "Last night he had a high fever and called her name all night long. The pain of betrayal kept him alive all night." "Betrayal?" Gale narrowed his eyes. Has Sierra accepted Eric? He only dared to touch her because he was drunk, and he secretly went to recruit for her. This is a naive and pitiful person who doesn't know how to fall in love. Jem thought it was like this again, and he was a little annoyed. Then what do you think we should do, Gale? Send Sierra to his room and let him choose, kill her or accept her. Jem, so is this any different from what he just proposed? Sierra, Gale shouted. Sierra, who was regretting why she didn't call for a taxi, paused, adjusted her facial expression and looked back. Come with us, I will take you to see Eric. I hope you can resolve the misunderstanding. Gale's tone sounded like a compromise, but Sierra was keenly aware of the unusualness in it. She had already gotten the best answer to the purpose of her trip, so why were she asked to go back to see Eric now? Will he see me? She could only walk back with a happy smile. Gale turned his back to her and squatted down. Come on. Ah, Sierra was stunned and said without knowing why, Mr. Gale, my legs are good and I can walk on my own. You're too slow, come up. Sierra's heart suddenly sank, and she felt that things were very strange. She was a little embarrassed, but she took a deep breath and climbed onto his generous back obediently. Jem gave her a meaningful smile and said, let's go. Gale's hill-like body was very light when running, or rather too light, not only in terms of speed, but it was unusual in front of Sierra's eyes. Even when he jumped over a fallen tree root with a diameter of 1 meter in front of him, he jumped to a height of more than 2 meters and landed heavily on the ground without much sound. Sierra hugged his neck tightly, suppressing the screams on her lips, her heart having sunk to the bottom. They don't hide their abilities in front of themselves anymore. What does this mean? What a good guess. Either she reconciles with Eric today, exposes the truth and leaves here alive, or her body will be left in this deep mountain forever and forgotten. It's really bad. 10 minutes later. What's your speed? Sierra slid off Gale's back with weak feet and gasped, why is it so fast? Gale went over and hugged Greenie, who came forward, and the other party slapped his chest hard. What are you doing? Why did you bring Sierra up at this time? Eric needs her. Greenie was furious, are you crazy? Then, she looked at Sierra with extremely apologetic and sad eyes, no, you will definitely kill her. I'm sorry if there's a typo in Diddy. It's the last day of PK. If you can, order them all. If you have enough money, please give me a reward. Epsilon equals Omicron asterisk, alas. Hope to advance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 137. Chapter 137. Eric. Sierra stood there with a blank look on her face. I don't understand what you mean. Why did Eric kill me? There was just a little misunderstanding between him and me, it hasn't reached this point yet. Greenie pinched Gale's arm and said sadly, to you, it was just a small misunderstanding, but these misunderstandings stimulated Eric, and some changes occurred in him. Gale, she helped us, you can't just kill her and send her back. She turned her head to persuade Gale again. He carefully supported her and told her another desperate fact. I showed her some of our abilities. So Sierra's escape route has long been blocked. Since she can't escape unscathed, she can only continue to struggle. I don't understand. Sierra looked at the cabin that belonged to Eric and calmed down. Since the incident happened because of me, I have to go and see him. After all, they brought her up with their ability revealed, so there was no reason to put her back intact. She could only go and see Eric's condition now. She had a vague idea of what exactly had changed in him. Robinson's wheelchair blocked the door, and Fanny stood behind him, blocking Sierra's way in. You have to think carefully. The old and energetic face looked up at her. You only have one chance to choose, Sierra. Don't be so mysterious. I'm responsible for my choices. Sierra bypassed the two of them and directly pushed open Eric's unlocked door. After entering, she closed the door with her heel. It was very dark inside. She suddenly entered the darkness from the dazzling light outside. Her eyes could not see clearly what was around her. She could only vaguely see the outline of a small bed placed against the wall. The sound of rough breathing rippled regularly in the bedroom, accompanied by unbearable humming. It was Eric who was trying to endure something. Sierra became nervous immediately and groped towards the bed. Eric? Are you okay? I heard you had a fever all night. Eric. The girl's worried voice seemed far away, and the familiar smell made the person lying on the bed breathe harder. His Sierra already belonged to someone else, how could she come to see him? Pain enveloped the tip of his heart, and the hatred of betrayal made him curl up. Sierra heard a noise on the bed, but it was difficult for her to walk over. The floor in the dark bedroom was a mess. First she stepped on a wooden cup and almost fell down, then kicked a stool across the middle of the road and threw herself forward unsteadily. Sierra's knees hit the ground, and even though there was a thin blanket that fell on the ground, she couldn't help but let out a cry of pain. Hiss. The sound of the girl throwing herself down beside the bed was extremely clear, the sound of her clothes rubbing against each other, and the delicious fragrance emitted were all the smells in Eric's dream, so close at this moment. His closed eyes suddenly opened, and his eyes, which could see everything clearly in the darkness, accurately locked onto the girl who had fallen beside the bed. Her long dark brown curly hair was braided into a thick strand on one side of her chest. Her pretty little face was wrinkled together. She rubbed her knees with her fingers and bit her lips tightly. It looked like she was hurting from the fall. Eric's already fast-beating heart was about to pierce his chest at this moment. He pressed the bedboard with one hand and supported his body bit by bit. Sella. Sierra suddenly turned around, staring blankly at the blurry outline of the man in the darkness. His hoarse voice was different from the boy's voice during the previous transformation period. A completely mature voice with a strange melancholy. Sierra's hand touched a hot hand on the bedboard and she worried, "What's wrong with you? Why don't you light a candle? I can't see anything clearly." The other party was silent for a long time, then endured the pain and withdrew his hand, pretending to be cold and said, "I don't know why you came. Now go out and let Gail and the others take you down the mountain." She also wanted to do this, but the consequences were no different from the first time she met Hynek and was almost killed. Sierra fell to the edge of the bed and lowered her head a little. "Do you hate me?" Eric didn't reply, and the only sound in the room was his rough and suppressed breathing. After a long time, Sierra got no response and stood up lonely, holding onto the bedboard. She was afraid of falling, so she groped back a little bit. Eric on the bed was like a dormant beast waiting for an opportunity, and his eyes could not be separated from the slender girl on the back. His body grew much taller, and he quietly got out of bed after her. Now he could completely cover the thin girl in front of him with just a little effort. He thought he hid it very well, but he ignored the feeling that the heat on his body brought to Sierra. Even without those rough breathing sounds, she could still feel the warmth that was almost scalding her skin behind her. He simply couldn't bear to let her leave, otherwise why wouldn't he even be able to say what he hated about her? Knowing that the matter could still be undone, Sierra calculated that she had almost reached the place where she had just fallen. She did not make any false moves, and the foot she stepped out naturally stepped into the middle of the two stool legs, and the foot that came up behind accidentally kicked it again. On one of the stool legs. She exclaimed again, closed her eyes and let herself fall forward. A hot arm instantly wrapped around her waist and hugged her tightly, pulling the fallen person out of the stool legs. Sierra's back hit Eric's chest, and the temperature was as hot as flint, causing her body to shrink. "Eric. The door is 5 meters away from you. Get out and don't come to me again." The person behind her let go of her and wanted to step back. Sierra grabbed his burning arm and said anxiously, "You have a serious fever, why don't you let them take care of you?" "It's none of your business." Eric wanted to get rid of her, but subconsciously he always thought about what to do if she fell again later, and his movements were frozen in place. The resentment in his tone was thick, and Sierra knew that he must have seen the whole process of her kissing with Roxt. "It's not easy to come back from this situation." "Why is it none of my business? I feel bad." These 3 words stung Eric again. As soon as she finished speaking, her waist was suddenly picked up by the red-hot steel-like arms, and her whole body fell onto the hard bedboard. The bedboard and even the mattress were gone, and Sierra's back hurt a little from the impact. As soon as she remembered, the young man in the darkness in front of her pushed her back. Eric held one of her wrists and knelt on her with his knees spread apart. His body was half bent, but he didn't dare to really press her, and his angry voice was right in front of her. "In what capacity do you care about me? That mermaid woman?" "I don't, it's just me." Sierra didn't like this unsafe position. She was completely controlled, and the Eric in her body was emotionally intense and wanted to be on the verge of exploding at any time. "After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the shore." Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 138. He would never have had such an inappropriate attitude before. Is it because of his wolf genes that are affecting him? "I'm not with that mermaid, Eric. Can you sober up and treat your illness and reduce the fever first?" she coaxed him softly. Eric felt even more uncomfortable when he heard her deceptive answer. He stared at the worried face in front of him and felt that the ambiguous collisions they had had before were all poor and sad jokes. The person she wanted to prepare a dowry for and elope with was never him. She was thinking of the mermaid when she was drunk under the moonlight. He misunderstood. "Why are you still lying to me now?" he growled in pain. "Can you accept any species?" "Accept me? I will make you fearful, disgusted and stay away from you, right? Because of me bad identity." "Eric, it's not me." Just as Sierra was about to explain the kiss, the boy on top of her arched his back in vain and let out a huge beastly roar. He let go of her and jumped out of the bed. A crackling sound was heard in the air, and the tables and chairs crackled and were smashed to pieces by sharp claws. Sierra was frightened by the huge movement. She huddled on the bed that was full of Eric's scent. She couldn't see anything clearly in front of her eyes, but she knew something had changed. The tall figure that should have been upright disappeared and turned into a huge animal that roared like a beast. Eric transformed. Sierra, who was prepared, was still stunned. She felt that it shouldn't have come so soon. The werewolf transformed on a full moon night at the age of 18 and became a person with the ability to shapeshift. Eric is 1 year younger than her this year, and it is far from time for him to transform. Was it because Luosi had kissed her and was stimulated by being caught by him? The possibility is almost 100%. The guilt in Sierra's heart suddenly overflowed like a tide. This happened so suddenly that she really didn't have any preparation to think about it. Eric. She didn't know where he was destroying furniture now, so she grabbed the hem of her skirt with her fingers and called him softly. There was sudden movement in the darkness ahead. Under the thick black fur, a pair of green eyes that seemed to be glowing were staring straight at her. Sierra sat on the bed with her back to the wall, watching Eric, who was about the size of a horse, walking towards her. A thick, heavy, and weighty claw was placed on the bed. Soon, his hind limbs jumped, and the huge wolf body occupied the entire small bed. The cot creaked. Sierra was trapped in the bed by his furry body, with his huge head so close at hand, and his beastly eyes devoid of any human brilliance. Eric, who transformed into a wolf, doesn't know how much sanity he has left. Now is the time when Sierra is most in danger, and her heart is beating loudly. Eric. What responded to her was the giant wolf's heavy breathing and protesting grunt. Sierra licked her lips, touched its chin little by little with her fingers, and held its head. Seeing that he didn't resist anymore, she mustered up the courage to place a gentle kiss on the beast's mouth with its fangs exposed. "Who said you made me feel scared and disgusted?" She sighed softly, completely ignoring his wolf form. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain. You left your wallet and ran away." Sierra buried her face into his furry neck. "You think you can scare me away, but you underestimate me too much." Eric, who had turned into a beast, sat on the bed, his chaotic mind just needing a kiss from the girl to return to normal. Not being able to hurt her has become a subconscious behavior. He put away his fangs and felt her soft and white face hidden in his hair. He made a gurgling sound in his throat. "You're not afraid of me?" The boy with the wolf body finally spoke out, his grievances and unwillingness erupting at this moment. "You are not afraid of vampires or mermaids, so you are not afraid of me either. There is no difference in essence." Sierra's thighs stood up while she was sitting on the bed, her hands wrapped around his entire head, and she pressed her body against his. "You are different, Eric. At the beginning, all I wanted was you. It was only when things went wrong later that she was forced to try 3 different things. I really didn't lie to you, this is the truth." Her fingers penetrated deep into the hair on his neck, like squeezing the back of a pet. She grabbed the soft flesh on the back of his neck and pinched it. The giant wolf in front of him remained motionless, as if his body had turned on a secret switch. The transformation speed only takes an instant, and Sierra's whole body is spinning. She was once again pushed down on the bed by him in human form. Just as she was about to take the opportunity to explain the kissing incident to him, Eric, who turned into a human, blocked her mouth with his lips and muttered everything she wanted to say. Stuffed it back without moving. His kiss was fierce, biting her lips until it hurt. Sierra felt like she was surrounded by a ball of fire. She instinctively felt the pain and wanted to shrink back, but her back was already pressed against the bedboard with no way to retreat. One hand was still pressing her waist, pinning her firmly. Unable to move on the bedboard. The big hand placed on the back of her neck at some point forced her to raise her head again. The other person's heavy breathing and jerky kiss made her feel dizzy. She put her hand on Eric's stone-like back and patted it a few times. This soothing movement made the man's body stiffen, followed by the transition from restraint to madness. She had never gotten this kind of aggressive kiss from Eric, and behind this was the absolute vulnerability and love he showed towards her. He won't leave her. At some point, Sierra thought vaguely. Her brain began to lack oxygen, and she didn't know when she fainted on the bed. Eric, who regained his consciousness, didn't know how long it took before he held her tightly in his arms and lay down on the bed. He was not wearing a single strand of hair, and was using his body to hold the slightly disheveled, half-conscious girl. The last ray of sunset in the evening passed over the last corner of the mountains, and the night quietly climbed up to the sky. Sierra, who had slept all afternoon, was woken up by the heat. There was a lot of sweat on her forehead and the tip of her nose, and her dress clung tightly to her body, giving it a sticky smell. There was still no light in the room, and the visibility was worse than in the afternoon. Even the outline of a human figure could not be seen. Sierra tried to move her arm, and found that she and her hand were firmly trapped in one arm. The thick arm went around hers and rested on her abdomen. Eric, as soon as Sierra turned her face to the person who had been guarding her all afternoon, her warm lips pressed against hers. "Don't leave." Before she could say anything, he spoke first, his arms tightly cuffing her like shackles and tightening them tighter and tighter. Even if he knew that Sierra had kissed someone else, no matter how unwilling and angry he was, when she appeared in front of him and hugged him while lying on his bed, he didn't want to let go. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Cheng. Chapter 139. Sierra felt that his hair seemed to have grown a lot. Originally it should have been close to the scalp, and the hair was always prickly, but now his head came closer, and some of the long hair was also hooked on her face. She ignored the question for the time being and moved her neck back to avoid his lips. "You came to give me money last weekend and saw me kissing that mermaid." "Don't say it." Eric lowered his head and rubbed her shoulder with his lips. "It took me a long time to wipe away his scent from you." Just now he covered her body with his scent like a madman. After doing all those crazy things in a sober state, he could not imagine what she would do to him in the future. Sierra sighed lowly, hearing the sadness in his tone, and bent her arms to hug his arms across her abdomen. "If I told you that it was really just a misunderstanding, would you believe it?" Eric was silent for a moment, and when he regained his senses, he smiled self-deprecatingly. "I have no right to know this, we have nothing to do with each other in the first place." He was just a bastard who only dared to kiss her drunkenly. They had never gotten closer except today when he lost control and coerced her. Eric's breathing became heavy and his heart beat painfully. To him, it was like a kiss and warmth deceived by sympathy. Soon, his girl would take everything back angrily, and she might not even want to be a friend. Sierra turned sideways in the arms of the pessimistic Eric, resting her head on one of his strong arms, and gently bumped her forehead against his strong chest. "The mermaid's saliva has the ability to recover. When you bumped into us, kissing, he was actually helping me heal." This was the best defense she could give, and the easiest one to convince. She struggled to free her right hand from his arms, raised her wrist in the air, flipped it left and right, and made many movements. "Look, are everything healed?" Eric stretched out his fingers and rubbed her wrist gently. The bones were checked by kneading the fingertips to confirm that they had indeed grown. His tone suddenly said, "So, are you just letting him help you with treatment?" "Because I want to play the piano, and if my wrist is not good, I will never be able to take lessons." Sierra let him hold her, and kissed his pounding heart with her lips. "If you had stopped and asked me, I will explain it to you. That kiss was just because I needed some special medicine. I'm sorry for making you misunderstood and sad." The sincere apology made Eric mutter something softly, and the voice was inaudible, but Sierra still heard it clearly. "You don't love him, you don't hate me, and you don't hate the mistakes I made against you today." "I don't love anyone, but I like you, Eric, very much." Sierra moved up, the thick arms behind her head moved to the back of her neck to cushion her, and she also succeeded in lying at the same height as Eric. "I don't think your liking for me is a mistake." Her wrist slipped from her big palm, followed the man's hot chest in the darkness, and touched the hard-lined face. Sensing that the other party was silent and uneasy, Sierra smiled softly, and her unfocused eyes burst out with a trace of energy. "Or maybe I actually like the process of kissing you. You are an adult now, right? I learned from Gail and the others. I guessed a bit from your words and deeds, and you just suddenly turned into a big dog." Not knowing how to suppress the joy at this moment, Eric's thick and sexy lips trembled and he spat out a defense. "That's a wolf." "I know, it's just my affectionate name for you." Sierra put one arm around his neck, their faces touched each other, their breaths blended, and there was almost no gap. "Am I the first to see it?" "You are the first." Eric's voice was hoarse. "Very cool." The girl's light laughter was warm and joyful. There was no fear, no flinching, nothing. It was so beautiful that he wanted to hold his breath to appreciate her appearance at this moment. "Because I like you, I couldn't help but kiss you. This is acceptable to you." Eric's hand on her waist hugged her entire back at some point. "I never said I wouldn't accept it." Sierra's laughter became a little more evil. "You don't really think that when a drunk person happens to lose his memory every time he kisses you, do you? You always remember, why?" Thinking of the possible answers, Eric's breathing became heavy again, and his heart rushed excitedly in his chest. He wished he could jump out now and let the girl in front of him see what he was. What a joy! "The first time I was at a loss, but the second time I asked you to bring me wine, it was on purpose." As soon as Sierra finished speaking with a smile, Eric blocked her mouth again, and this time she also had a choice. She put her arms around his neck and responded slightly. And these responses were enough for a newly grown man to lose his composure. He picked her up and pushed her against the wall beside the bed, holding her neck with one hand. French kissing is something that every male protagonist seems to be self-taught, Sierra thought vaguely. Knock knock. Jem's evil laugh was just outside the door. It seems that you have reconciled. Can you stick to each other next time? It's getting dark, and Master Lizzie is going to call the police if Sierra doesn't come home. Shut up, Jem. Eric turned his head and shouted dissatisfied, I haven't settled the score with you yet. Settling the accounts, Jem exaggerated, Gale has calculated the time and it has been 3 days since your first transformation. You have perfectly controlled it today, haven't you? Is there an accident? Eric turned back to Sierra and lowered his voice unconsciously, they threw you in like this, it's very dangerous. You will never hurt me. Sierra smiled and said, I still remember what you said. What's more, she leaned over and hugged his waist, I really don't want you to misunderstand me, and I don't want to lose you. Are we finally reconciled? Serge asked. We're reconciled. Eric paused and then said, but I won't just be your friend until you love me. The word love is too heavy for werewolves, and they will only have one partner in their lives. Sierra smiled softly, I understand. Now Mr. Eric, please get up and light a lamp, and take me home first. Eric rolled out of bed, fumbled for his pants and put them on, and quickly went outside to get a gas lamp. When the light illuminated the entire room, Sierra's eyes widened slightly. There was almost no complete piece of furniture in the house, and debris of pure wooden furniture was everywhere. The mattresses and beddings were all broken, and cotton wool was scattered all over the floor. Your destructive power is really amazing. Sierra leaned on Eric's arms and let him carry her out. Before I became an adult, I imagined the situation, that I was supposed to do it all in the forest. The light illuminated Eric, who had long black hair. His body and bones looked as strong as an adult's. Each honey-colored muscle produced a layer of shiny reflection due to the high temperature of the body, which was like a layer of fine sweat appearing on the surface of the skin. Ciro looked at his face and suddenly felt that someone could really lose his immature youth overnight and grow into such an aggressive and brutal beauty. Am I like a savage now? Eric felt a little embarrassed when he kept staring at him. I have to send you down the mountain. It's not convenient for you to put on your clothes and take care of yourself. Does turning into a wolf tear your clothes? After understanding, Sierra lowered her head subconsciously, then why are you still wearing pants? Eric was stopped by her words and hesitated, do you want me to take it off here and leave it to you for safekeeping? Sierra, who realized what she was talking about, coughed slightly and her face turned red, no, you should leave it to me after you transform. Eric's chest vibrated, and magnetic laughter escaped from his lips. He carried the person out of the hut, and the tribesmen outside were waiting for a long time. Greenie held an oil paper bag in her hand and walked up to her with a happy face and handed it to her, spicy rabbit heads and some meat skewers. Take them with you to eat on the way. Robinson also waited outside all night. Eric nodded to him, Dad. He looked at Sierra, now that you know the secret of our tribe, Eric will ensure that you will not reveal our origins. If you leak the werewolf thing, you are not Eric's partner, Robinson said seriously, you will be killed, Sierra. I hope you understand our rules. In other words, as long as she kept the secret nothing would happen, which was a good result. She looked at Eric and nodded slightly. I hope you can do business normally tomorrow. People on the street are complaining that they can't buy meat as good as you here. Saying their final goodbyes to them, Sierra ran into the forest with Eric's spare clothes in one hand and a paper bag filled with food in the other. The furry giant wolf transformed in an instant. Eric hid behind a thick fir tree. She only knew that the crackling sounds were the sounds of bones deforming and clothes being torn. On a rock under the moonlight, A gray wolf about the size of a horse shook its thick fur, and the hair with black spots swayed like waves. Eric, who was in wolf form, came to her with his pants in his mouth, and he was taller than her head on all fours. His brown eyes were large, reflecting her face and gentleness. Sierra took over his pants and said with a look of helplessness, "If I don't have anything in my hands, I will definitely want to touch you enough." The fur covered Eric's embarrassed face. He growled at her twice, turned around and lowered his limbs to make it easier for her to climb up. The soft hair felt comfortable under his body. Eric walked very smoothly at first, just to give Sierra time to eat. She fed her hungry belly, put away the oil paper bag and wiped her hands with a handkerchief, then she lay on Eric's back, her legs lightly crossed. "I'm done eating, let's go quickly bar. 3K will be issued first and one more will be issued later. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 140. A wolf howled was heard in the forest, and Fanny, who had sensitive hearing, sneered, "He is really excited. Perhaps Sierra is very suitable for Eric." She saw him turn into a wolf and didn't even scream in the house. Jem crossed his hands on his chest and said with some anticipation, "He has already transformed in advance, and he doesn't know when this moment will come." Back near the manor, Sierra climbed off Eric's back and watched him take his clothes to an oak tree and change them out. "How was it?" he asked with a smile. "How about what?" "The feeling of riding me." Sierra was silent for a few seconds. "It's quite easy to ride." The conversation was a bit strange, but Eric felt very happy when he was praised by her. He walked to her and boldly held her in his arms in the dark. "I've wanted to do this for a long time, hug you openly." Soon, he let go and said, "Good night." Sierra took 2 steps out, then looked back at him. "Will you still come to play with me?" "Of course." "Do you want to take a hot spring bath? Can I take you there when I'm free?" Sierra smiled and nodded. "Okay, good night Eric." Seeing that she was about to step into the gravel path of the manor, Eric quickly ran to her again, leaned over and kissed her on the lips. "Say good night again." Sierra touched her lips, looked at the young man's back and ran away after kissing him, and chuckled softly. The manor was brightly lit, and at 7:30 p.m., she had already missed dinner time. Lizzie became angry again at her late return. "You pick a time and I'll take you back to Leicestershire." Sierra responded without a smile, "I will go back after your and Mrs. Josie's wedding is over. Just remember to buy a boat ticket for me." Lizzie snorted angrily, "Without rules, even school can't teach you well." Sierra continued to show her face. "Don't you know what's going on outside? I killed teacher Bernice as soon as I went there. I'm a nemesis." Josie stood up and comforted her like a fake good person again. Okay, Sierra, just sit down and eat something without dinner. Don't come back so late tomorrow." "Thank you for your fake kindness, Mrs. Josie." Sierra exited the restaurant and smiled at her and Anaxi again. "Go out and walk around more when you have time, and listen to the rumors outside." The next morning, Sarah took the money bag and rode to Rose Hill's house. There are already serious rumors about their family on the street, mainly due to opposing topics, which can easily lead to arguments among all parties. One is the rumor that Sierra is arrogant and domineering at home and bullies her sister. The other is the rumor that she is loyal to charity and does not hesitate to borrow money to save black slaves to open factories. Most of these good reputations came from the mouths of wealthy businesswomen, orphanages, single-family elderly people, and even regular customers of the laundry factory who helped her clarify everything. The wind was blowing in her direction. Compared with the rumors that smeared her for hurting her family, her persona of a kind angel has been firmly established in circles of all walks of life. No matter which class the rumors spread, there are people who know the truth who stand up to defend Sira. Now Wally has another kind of voice, a thoughtful mistress who is eager to get married and make things right, who is harsh on his stepdaughter, and who often resorts to deliberate frame-up methods. Mr. Lizzie dotes on his mistress too much, and he is already old and confused. Such hot aristocratic tidbits, just as Sira thought, became everyone's talk after dinner. Updates have been a bit slow recently, and the problem is severe. Epsilon equals Omicron asterisk, alas. Forgive me. After dressing up as the evil girl in the second game, I opened my eyes and found myself in the Sure. Author, Mei Guicheng. Chapter 141. I don't know if Lizzie's wedding can still be held as scheduled. Sierra was looking forward to it, and she hoped that Lizzie could persevere until the wedding day so that she could cause some more damage. She rode horseback to Rose Hill's castle, and several black cars were parked at the door. It seemed that she was not the only visitor. Aldine, who heard the noise, ducked to the door and opened the door. "Miss Sarah, did you come without any appointment or invitation?" It could be heard that Aldine did not welcome her today. "I'm here to give money to Mr. Rosehill." Sierra took out her purse. "He bought the slave girl for me at that time. I owe him. The master is busy and has no time to receive you." Aldine gave a stiff smile. "You can give it to him next time." Sierra was silent, took back her money bag and turned to leave, but she didn't expect a strange woman's cry to suddenly come from the castle. She paused and turned around. "Is he killing someone?" "No, it's just a small trial," Aldine said. "It has nothing to do with you. Go back, Sarah." "All right." She didn't want to cause trouble and turned around to leave. A man in a black trench coat suddenly appeared in front of her, and Sierra, who was close, almost bumped into him. She leaned back subconsciously, and the other person reached out to give her a hand. "Since you are Rosehill's guest, let's go in." A white-skinned man I had never seen before, with a pair of dark peach blossom eyes, seemed to be able to attract people. Sierra could feel through his gloves that the other person had no body heat and was a vampire. She suddenly understood why Aldine let her go. She glanced at the car parked next to her and her heart trembled. Did this happen to be a vampire gathering? As expected, the vicious supporting character's physique will cause bad luck wherever he goes. Aldine glanced at him, aware of the hunting tendency in the other person, and understood that Sierra must be brought to her master today, otherwise it would be difficult to say whether she would survive the night. "Let's go." The door is open. The ancient castle located in the mountains never uses a fireplace. The temperature inside where the sun does not shine is much lower than outside. Sierra rubbed her arms as soon as she entered. She followed Aldine through the spiral staircase that went into the ground. She hadn't discovered it the last time she came here. She didn't expect that there was a cave underneath such an old-looking castle. My distant relative was sentenced today, and she came to this wretched place to carry out the sentence. It's really humiliating to her. The vampire with the feminine face snorted softly, his eyes frequently looking at the exposed thin neck of Sierra. Her unique aroma of virginity and blood attracted him from the beginning. Such a girl is the best and must taste delicious. He licked his lips unconsciously, his two fangs itching slightly. Sierra noticed the other party's gaze that was about to eat her alive, and followed Aldine all the way to the underground. The sight suddenly became brighter, and there was a large circular cellar made of stone walls, with several flickering candle lights swaying in the recessed wall recesses. The cold wind coming from nowhere swirled around the stone, making Sierra want to sneeze from the cold. In the middle of the circular cellar lay a pale-faced woman and a man with normal skin color. 5 men and women in black robes stood on one side. Opposite them was Rose Hill, who was sitting on a black sofa, and several unfamiliar faces behind him who looked like patron saints. Such a scene reminded Sierra of the sacrificial rituals in some evil religious movies. All the vampire's eyes were attracted by this lamb that strayed into the herd of beasts. Her scent is alluring and unique, and of high quality. Aldine was the first to speak out, "Master, Miss Sarah is here." He winked at Sierra and motioned her to come to Rose Hill. Of course, Sierra knew who was the safest next to her at the moment, but before she could take a step, the young man on the black leather sofa came to her in the blink of an eye, grabbed her wrist and pushed her into his arms. Inside. He pointed at Aldine, whose voice was a bit sharp due to anger, "I'm not asking you to send her out." Aldine lowered his eyes and said, "I met Jeremy." The feminine vampire known as Jeremy greeted Rose Hill, "I thought they were just ordinary friends." The unspoken meaning of these words to Sierra was that she was being treated like a plate of food delivered to her door. In the past years, many women came to Rose Hill to show their courtesy, and some of them probably fell into their mouths. Jeremy's eyes swept across Sierra's face, saying meaningfully, "It turns out not to be the case." What an unexpected discovery. Respect the master's attitude. Jeremy Aldine's face turned cold, and his commanding tone made Jeremy lower his head and apologize instantly, "I'm sorry, Mr. Rosehill." Sierra was a little afraid to speak because of the scene in front of her. She secretly hit it in the chest in front of her and lowered her voice and said, "I forgot to call you. I just wanted to give you money today." "What money?" Rosehill took off his black suit jacket, put it on her body to cover part of the smell, and pulled her to the sofa. There was only enough room for one person on the small black sofa. Sierra watched him sit down and patted his straight legs, then sat on it without any hesitation for the sake of his life. "Last time you bought slaves for me, this time the factory had its first income. I took part of your share first." Sierra shrank into his suit jacket, not daring to look around. "Stay here." Rosehill put his arm around her waist and declared his sovereignty. Several guards behind him lowered their eyes and glanced at the girl with only her head exposed. This was the first time they met their family leader, and he had a blood bottle next to him. What a strange phenomenon. With Rosehill's scent covering them, no one among the vampires present paid attention to the fragrant dessert. "Continue." Rosehill put his hand on Sierra's back and rubbed it gently to comfort her. "I still say what I said to Rosehill, advocating that Lucia be sentenced to death," a guard behind him said. "I just wanted to save my lover." "What's wrong with me?" The female vampire on the ground was dazzlingly beautiful, with a face that couldn't shed tears, but was extremely sad. Next to her was her tribe, several men and women hugging each other. "Rosehill, we have always followed the rules for 100 years, but this time it was an accident. No one can guarantee that they will never make mistakes and forgive her." once they begged. Sierra didn't quite understand what was going on. She looked at the man next to the beautiful vampire. He was an ordinary person in a semi-fainting state. His skin was yellowish, and he was not a vampire. So being with a vampire is not allowed to break the law? This idea quietly emerged in her mind, and was listened to by Rosehill, who was good at capturing the inner voice. "It sounds like you can get a lighter punishment." His attitude was quite calm. "There is another chapter to be posted in the morning. Kevin is awesome. Alas.